Hi everyone, so today I literally just finished making this t-shirt dress. It's like in the shape of a t-shirt but long, and I love it so much. I'm going to show you how I made it. So the inspiration for this dress comes from Uniqlo, and I'm doing this little series called like So Uniqlo, where I try to make my own versions of minimalist inspired clothing. As you can see here, the Uniqlo t-shirt dress is really cute and chic, and it's great for streetwear, and it can also be for dressier occasions. So you will need 4 main pieces. You'll need the bodice front and back, you'll need 2 sleeve pieces, and a little strip to make the collar. I actually followed a t-shirt sewing tutorial, which I will link below, and I'm just following the instructions that I got online, and it's very simple. I would recommend you actually try making a t-shirt before making a t-shirt dress because it's slightly more manageable. Basically, I got a shirt that fit me pretty well, a stretchy t-shirt, and then I got out a piece of catalog paper and I folded the t-shirt in half down the middle, and I started tracing out the back of the t-shirt. So I needed to trace around the neck, the shoulder, the armholes, leaving out the sleeves at the moment, and as you know, the body of it from the underarm down to the waist. And I'm doing the back piece first, and then I'm cutting it out with like 3/8 of an inch of seam allowance. It's always good to be precise, but it's also good to leave us a little bit of room to play around with it. This dress is easy to fit, so if it's slightly big, that's okay. You can actually take it in a little bit. And I also replicated the pattern and cut out the front bodice piece, which has a lower neckline and a sleeve curve that is slightly set in a little bit compared to the back piece. Now I got both the front and back pieces, and I started tracing the sleeve. You can see in the tutorial, I will link below exactly how to do this, but I basically followed the instructions, and I'm here to tell you that the instructions given work pretty well. So I followed the sleeve, like the height of the sleeve, which is different. The top of it will be longer and the bottom of it will be shorter, and then I used the bodice to give me the curve that I wanted for that. I folded my fabric into quarters so that with my half bodice piece, using the back piece, I was able to cut out both the front and back pattern pieces. And I also took a jumper dress and I put it on top of the t-shirt pattern, and I used that to decide how wide and long the skirt was going to be. And it's like a narrow A-line skirt. And basically take a dress, like an A-line dress that fits you, and that's the easiest way to create a nice long narrow skirt that's going to be wide enough for you. So I added the seam allowance to that on the fabric itself, so I was able to use the bodice, the jumper, and then just cut the fabric to the shape that I needed. So now we have the front and back bodice pieces, and we're going to start by sewing the shoulder seams together of the front and back piece. Basically, you want the wrong sides of the fabric on the outside. We're sewing the insides together, so when we wear the fabric, the seam isn't showing. What I did was just lightly pin them together using sewing pins to make it more precise. The actual construction of a piece of clothing made with stretchy fabric, like knit fabric or jersey as it is called, is very simple. You will find there are fewer seams, and it's just a way simpler process. But the tricky part is working with your machine. I use an ordinary sewing machine and an ordinary sewing needle. Tried using ballpoint special needles for stretchy fabric, and guess what? They didn't work. They just didn't work, and I was so frustrated. And then when I accidentally used a normal sewing needle to sew stretchy fabric, I realized it was so much easier. So that's what I do. The most important rule, however, is, well, there are 2 rules. Firstly, practice practice, practice, practice. Do very simple projects like sewing yourself headbands or something like that. And secondly, do not pull or stretch the fabric when you're putting it into the machine. Feed it in loosely. Don't pull on it, because if you pull on it, then it will not be stretchy when you're done with it. It will be this weird wonky thing, overstretched. You want to feed it into the machine gently and loosely. Once the shoulder seams are sewn, it's important to do your sleeves first, as shown in this diagram. Do not sew the sides of your dress together. It's going to make life so difficult. You want the armhole to be one long continuous piece, and that makes it so much easier to add and pin on and sew the sleeves. Very, very simple. Once you get the hang of it, it's not difficult at all. So we have the front and back pieces joined together at the shoulder seam, and then I have the sleeve piece, and what I did was that thick part is for the front and the narrow part is for the back, and then I just pin it on like this so that when I sew it out it comes like that. So I'm going to pin the other side now. Center. So the center is joined to the center right here. So I have joined the center, and now I just take the sides. And the good thing about knit fabric is it's very forgiving. You can get away with not doing everything entirely precisely. Like if the sleeve doesn't match completely, that's okay. You can just slightly tweak it. Pinning makes a huge difference. I can definitely say if you're new to making a t-shirt dress or t-shirts in general, sewing with knit fabric, pin, because yeah, you may be able to do it by eye at the sewing machine, but it's just so much easier to prevent mistakes than to undo and unpick them. If you find that pinning is not enough, then you might want to baste it by hand loosely with a contrasting thread, and that's just sewing it with very large stitches very loosely, and it's a kind of pinning, so that is called basting. And so I went to the sewing machine. It's very simple. Once everything was pinned, just to sew it together. It literally only took minutes. The next step is to sew up the sides of your dress. You'll start at the armpit where the sleeve is attached to the bodice, and you want to sew from that line down to the end of the sleeve, sewing your sleeves closed. And you also want to start from that point again, going the opposite direction and sewing down the sides of your dress. As I was just sewing two pieces of fabric with the exact same shape together, I didn't pin it. You can pin it if you like to, and if it helps you. So it's just a matter of going to the sewing machine, matching the seams, the underarm seam together, and sewing the sleeve closed, and then going back to that underarm seam, and then sewing down the side of the dress, all in zigzag stitch. Congratulations! Once you get to this stage, your dress is basically constructed. You have sewn 6 seams, and now you just need to do a little bit of hemming at the edges of the sleeves and also the hemline of the dress before we finish off the collar with a special neck band, which is very simple, I promise. So all it takes is just folding. You can pin your sleeves down. I folded mine about half an inch in and then sewed it down with the sewing machine, following my sewing machine foot, which I like to use as a guide. So I just fold once and then I zigzag over the fold. The final step is to make the neckband, and this is a little bit more complicated, but bear with me. All you need is a strip of fabric, and you're going to sew that fabric into a loop. You're going to fold that loop in half and sew it to the inside of your t-shirt dress, and that's all it's going to take. You want to take a ruler and measure the neckline of your dress, and then you're going to take that and times 0.85, and that is your neck band, which is going to be a little bit smaller so that it will stretch and fit your neckline well. And all I did was just cut that out and go to the sewing machine and sew the two ends of the rectangle together to make a loop. Then I took that loop and I started to pin it to the neckline of the dress, folding it in half. Now I'm working from the outside of the dress and I am pinning the loop, the folded loop, to the raw edges of the neckline from the outside. Well, if you just look at the picture, it makes a lot more sense. I'm starting with the center back, which is where the seam is for the neckband. I'm matching it to the center back of the neckline, and then I'm folding that in half, and I'm taking the center front of the neckband and pinning it to the center front of the neckline. And then from there, of course, it's a little bit smaller, so you will need to stretch it and pin it down to the neckline. And what I found was very, very easy and was so worth the time doing was taking a needle with contrasting thread and just doing a very simple and loose running stitch. And this running stitch held everything in place for me as I sewed things with the sewing machine, so that there wasn't any like error at all. It's just so much easier to baste it, because you want it to be real nice and even so that your neckband doesn't look wonky. So this part, because it's the part that I think people will look at the most, the seam that is the most obvious, so it's important to get this one right. As you can see, I'm working from the outside of the dress, but when I fold the neckband up, the seam will not be seen from the outside, the seam will be on the inside. And here is the final dress. I really like everything about it, from the fit, the size. It just seems so perfect. Of course, it's taken me a while to practice sewing with knit and stretchy fabric, but getting the hang of it is so worth it, because I can make a dress like this that can be worn without a belt for just casual occasions like lounging around and reading, or I can pair it with a belt and fancy shoes and it looks like a formal dress as well. So if you like this video, do subscribe and stay tuned for more, because I will be making more sewing videos. I really enjoy teaching sewing and making clothes that I love to wear. Bye!